You are sitting in a room full of people, and somehow you still feel completely alone. Not because no one is talking to you. People are always talking to you. They are telling you their problems, their fears, their secrets, the things they have never told anyone else. And you listen. You really listen. You nod and you hold space and you say exactly the right thing, and they leave feeling lighter, and you stay feeling heavier, and somehow, some way, you have convinced yourself that this is just who you are, that this is a gift, that this is normal. But what if I told you that some of the things you call your personality are not your personality at all? What if some of the habits you wear, like a second skin, the hyper-awareness, the people-pleasing, the inability to say no without feeling guilty, the way you shrink yourself to make others comfortable, what if those things were not born from your sensitivity, but from something that happened to you long before you even had words for it? This is not going to be an easy episode, but it is going to be an honest one. And I think somewhere deep in you, you have been waiting for someone to finally say this out loud. Let us start with something that might sting a little. The word neglect. When most people hear it, they picture something dramatic. A child left alone, visibly suffering, clearly abandoned. And because your story does not look like that, because you had a roof over your head and food on the table and parents who were physically present, you have probably never let yourself use that word for your own childhood. You have probably minimized it, said things like, "It was not that bad," or "Other people had it worse," or "My parents did the best they could," and maybe they did. Maybe they really did do their best. Both things can be true. Your parents can have loved you and still have failed to meet your emotional needs. A house can be full of people and still be emotionally empty. You can grow up without ever being hit, without ever going hungry, and still grow up feeling fundamentally unseen. That is emotional neglect. And it leaves marks. Quiet marks. Marks that look from the outside like virtues. Here is the first one that I want you to sit with. You read the room before you enter it. You probably do not even notice yourself doing it anymore, because it is so automatic, so deeply wired into who you are. You walk into a space and within seconds you have assessed everyone's mood. You know who is upset, who is faking fine, who needs to be handled carefully today. You think this is empathy. And yes, part of it is, but part of it, a significant part of it, is hypervigilance. It is a nervous system that learned very early on that it was your job to monitor the emotional weather of the people around you. Because when you missed a shift in someone's mood, there were consequences. Maybe not physical consequences, but emotional ones. A parent who became cold and distant when they were upset. A home where tension filled the air and nobody talked about it. A childhood where you had to figure out on your own whether today was a safe day or not. Children who grow up in emotionally attuned homes, where their feelings are named and validated and responded to, they do not need to develop this skill to the same degree. They can walk into a room and just be in the room. But you learn to scan. You learn to adapt. You learn to become whoever the room needed you to be, so that everything stayed okay. And you got so good at it that now, decades later, you do it everywhere. With strangers, with coworker, with people you just met. And you call it being perceptive, being empathetic, being in tune with others, which it is. But underneath it, if you are honest with yourself, there is something that feels less like a gift and more like an alarm system that never turns off. That alarm system shows up in another way that you have probably never connected to your childhood, the way you apologize. Constantly. Reflexively. For things that are not your fault. For taking up space. For having needs. For existing in a way that might, possibly somehow inconvenience someone else. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. You apologize before asking a question. You over-explain your decisions as if you are always standing trial and the verdict is never quite in your favor. You feel this low-level guilt that hums in the background of your life, this sense that you are always one misstep away from someone being disappointed in you. Where does that come from? It comes from a childhood where your emotional needs were treated, consciously or not, as burdensome, where you learned that expressing how you felt led to discomfort, dismissal, or being made to feel like too much. So you started to manage yourself. You started to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier. You stopped crying as much, or you cried only in private. You stopped asking for things. You learned to need less, to want less, to be less, so that the people around you would not be burdened by the fullness of who you were. And here is the devastating part. You were a child. You were supposed to be a lot. You were supposed to be loud and messy and needy and emotionally chaotic sometimes, because that is what children are. That is developmentally appropriate. But somewhere along the way, you got the message that all of that was too much. And you internalized that message so completely that now, as an adult, you still move through the world with that same low-key apology in your body, that same shrinking, that same sense that your presence requires justification. Now, I want to talk about something that might surprise you, because it is a habit that looks, on the surface, like a wonderful quality. You are incredibly giving. You show up for people. You remember their birthdays. You check in when they are going through something hard. You give thoughtful gifts. You go out of your way to make others feel cared for. People love this about you. They call you the glue, the heart of the group, the one who holds everything together. But I want you to ask yourself something, and I want you to be really honest. Does giving feel like joy to you, or does it feel like safety? Because those are two very different things. Giving from joy looks like generosity. Giving from safety looks like a strategy. It is the unconscious belief, formed in childhood, that love is something you have to earn. That you will be valued only as long as you are useful. That if you stop giving, stop being helpful, stop being the person everyone can count on, people will leave. Or they will not be angry, but they will be indifferent. And indifference, for someone who grew up emotionally unseen, is one of the most terrifying things in the world. Children who are emotionally neglected do not always lack love. Sometimes they receive love, but it is conditional on their behavior. They are praised for being helpful, for being mature, for not causing problems. They are rewarded for performing wellness, for being the easy child, for managing their emotions quietly. And so they learn, at a very deep level, that their lovability is tied to their usefulness, that they are not loved simply for existing, but for what they do. And so they keep doing. They keep giving. They keep being needed because being needed feels, at least a little, like being safe. This is why boundaries feel so impossible for you. I know you need them. You have probably read about them. You might have even tried to set them. But in the moment when someone pushes back or expresses disappointment, something in you collapses. A wave of guilt hits you so hard you can barely breathe, and you backtrack, or you over-explain, or you end up apologizing for having had a need in the first place. And afterward you feel angry at yourself because you knew better and you did it anyway. But here is what I want you to understand. That collapse is not weakness. It is not a character flaw. It is a trauma response. When you were young and you asserted a need or a boundary, and it was met with anger, or disappointment, or silence, or dismissal, your nervous system learned something. It learned that asserting yourself is dangerous. It learned that other people's discomfort is a threat. And so now, every time you try to hold a boundary and someone pushes back, your body does what it was trained to do. It floods you with anxiety and guilt and the urgent need to make the discomfort stop. Not because you are weak, because you are responding exactly the way you were taught to respond. Let us talk about the overthinking, because I know that is a big one for you. You replay conversations. You analyze tone. You wonder what someone meant by that pause, by that word choice, by the fact that they responded with a period instead of an exclamation mark. You lie awake at night reconstructing interactions, looking for what you might have done wrong, trying to figure out if someone is upset with you, and if so, what you can do to fix it. And you have probably been told your whole life that you are too sensitive, that you read too much into things, that you need to just let it go. But the overthinking is not random. It is not just your brain being dramatic. It is a very logical response to having grown up in an environment where the emotional cues were inconsistent or unclear, where you had to work hard to decode what was happening beneath the surface, because the adults around you were not transparent about their feelings, where love felt unpredictable and you never quite knew what was coming next. Your brain developed this extraordinary capacity to analyze and predict and try to stay one step ahead of relational danger, because at some point in your childhood, that capacity protected you. It helped you navigate something that was genuinely hard to navigate. The problem is that your brain did not get the memo that things are different now. It is still running the same program. It is still treating every ambiguous interaction as a potential threat, still working overtime to make sure you are safe, which means making sure everyone around you is okay, which means never quite resting, never quite feeling like you can exhale and just trust that things are fine. There is one more habit I want to name before we get to the part where I ask something hard of you. And this one is perhaps the quietest and the most painful. You have a very hard time receiving care, receiving compliments, receiving help, receiving love that is freely given without strings attached. When someone does something genuinely kind for you, something in you gets uncomfortable. You deflect, you minimize, you say things like, "Oh, you did not have to do that," or "I am fine, I do not need anything." You feel almost guilty being on the receiving end of generosity, and a deep part of you does not quite believe that you deserve it, not just for being you, not without earning it first. That right there, that is the fingerprint of a child who did not have their emotional needs consistently met. A child who was not told enough, in ways they could feel, that they were worthy simply because they existed, that they did not have to be useful or easy or impressive or good, that they were enough before they did a single thing. And so you grew up and you became this extraordinarily empathetic, generous, deeply feeling person, and the world benefits enormously from who you are. The people in your life are lucky to have you. That is all real, but I need you to hear this next part very clearly, because it might be the most important thing anyone has said to you in a long time. Your empathy, as beautiful as it is, was partly built as a survival skill. Your giving was partly a strategy. Your sensitivity to others was partly because you had to be. And none of that makes you broken. None of that makes your gifts less real. But it does mean that somewhere underneath all of that giving and sensing and holding and showing up, there is a you who never quite got to be just a person. A you who never learned how to receive without guilt, how to rest without anxiety, how to say no without shame, how to take up space without apologizing for it. And I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it rather than rush past it. What would it mean for you to get those things now? Not because you have figured out how, but because you have finally decided that you deserve to. What would it look like to stop earning your place in every room you enter? To stop managing everyone else's feelings as a way of feeling safe? To let someone love you without immediately looking for what they want from you in return? This is not about abandoning your empathy. Your empathy is one of the most extraordinary things about you. The world desperately needs people who feel things deeply, who show up, who care. But empathy that comes from wholeness looks different from empathy that comes from fear. When you are empathetic from a full place, from a place where your own needs are also being met, you are not depleted. You are not resentful. You are not giving until there is nothing left and then wondering why you feel so invisible. You are giving from overflow, and that is sustainable. That is actually joyful. The path to that place is not a quick one. It involves at some point grieving what you did not get as a child. And I know that sounds dramatic, especially if your childhood was not obviously bad. But grief does not require a dramatic story. Sometimes it is just the quiet ache of finally acknowledging, I needed more than I got. I needed someone to ask me how I felt and really wait for the answer. I needed to be told I was enough when I was not being helpful. I needed to not have to manage the emotional atmosphere of my home. I needed more. You are allowed to need more. You were allowed to need more then, and you are allowed to need more now. Acknowledging that is not a betrayal of your parents. It is not saying your childhood was a disaster. It is just telling the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is the thing that actually sets you free. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not a checklist, not a 10-step plan, but a single image. I want you to imagine the child you were, the one who learned to read rooms and shrink themselves and give endlessly and apologize constantly and overthink every interaction. Picture that child clearly, and then I want you to ask, what did that child need that they did not get enough of? Because here is the thing about healing from emotional neglect. The work is not about going back. You cannot go back. But you can be, right now, today, for yourself, what you needed someone else to be for you back then. You can be the one who asks how you are feeling and actually waits for the answer. You can be the one who says, you do not have to earn your place here. You can be the one who holds yourself with the same extraordinary tenderness you have spent your whole life pouring into everyone else. You have been someone's safe place for so long. You have been the one who shows up, who listens, who stays. And I am not asking you to stop being that. I am asking you to also be that for yourself. To let yourself be someone who deserves care and rest and love and space, Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You are not too much, you never were. Someone just did not have the capacity to hold all of you, and you made yourself smaller to fit into their limitations, and then you forgot that you were ever bigger. But you were, and you still are. And that person, the full-sized, full-feeling, full-voiced version of you, they are not lost. They are just waiting. Waiting for you to stop apologizing, stop shrinking, stop giving yourself away piece by piece, and finally, gently, lovingly, choose yourself, not instead of others, but alongside them. That is the thing nobody told you when you were small, that your needs and other people's needs can both exist at the same time, that you can care deeply for others and also care deeply for yourself. That love is not a finite resource that you have to ration, that you showing up fully, loudly, needily, humanly, that is not a burden, that is the gift.